Well, Matt Prodger is still with us. What are the police saying about the way they handle that demonstration at Boots?
Well, we've got a number of statements in response to that film. First of all, the Metropolitan Police, they say that at that protest they arrested a woman on suspicion of criminal damage. They've also confirmed that CS spray, not pepper spray, was used by the police, and that they offered medical assistance to both protesters and members of the public, but it was refused. Now, as for the allegations levelled against Boots, the company says it remains headquartered in Nottingham and registered in the UK, and that they have invested £750 million in the UK. It's owned by a Swiss-based holding company called Alliance Boots, and they say they're employing more people and pay large national insurance contributions as a result. In a statement, they said the move to Switzerland reflects the increasingly international nature of our wider group. If we had registered in Switzerland purely for tax reasons, there are many other countries that we could have considered. Now, as for Vodafone, it says the £6 billion tax demand quoted by protesters is an urban myth, and that £1.25 billion they've agreed to pay the Treasury was the largest corporate tax settlement in UK history. It says they employ 10,000 staff in the UK, and they also told us that as a responsible UK-based company, we pay all the taxes we're required to in this country. In fact, we pay over £700 million into the UK coffers every year. And as for the government's line, well, it's saying that it has put £900 million into tackling tax avoidance and evasion since last year. And it also says that the £15 billion we referred to as outstanding at the beginning of the programme does not amount to tax lost.
Matt, thank you very much. Well, Tony Smith from the UK Uncut movement, you may have seen in that piece there, is with us now. And from the Institute of Directors, Boots have done nothing illegal. Why do you want to damage their business?
What they've done is totally wrong. They're avoiding tax.
In your judgment, but it's not illegal.
It's not illegal, but the law shouldn't be the main.
So your beef is not with Boots, your beef is with the law?
Our beef is with both. Both Boots for avoiding tax they owe the British public, and with the government for refusing to tighten the rules. But you've conceded they've done nothing illegal? They've done nothing illegal, and that's why those laws should be changed, because those laws are wrong.
Why don't you lobby the government?
Because what we're doing, the tactics we use, draw attention to the issue, which give us a platform to make the point. We've pushed the issue of tax avoidance way up the political agenda.
One of your colleagues was quite explicit there. Your tactic is to damage the company.
It's both. We think the companies who avoid tax should pay, and we think the government should close the loopholes.
The company's done nothing wrong.
Not they've done nothing wrong, they've done nothing illegal. I think there's a big difference between the two.
Ah, so it's morality.
Morality is a big part of it, but we also argue that the laws should be changed.
How, in your judgment, do we decide that a company is behaving morally if it's already obeying the law?
Because there's a clear precedent for how much these companies should be paying. There's certain rules about how much they should be paying, what percentage of their profits they should pay. They use complex offshore systems to ensure that they pay much less than they're meant to.
Which you've already conceded are legal.
Right.
So what morally should they be paying?
They should be adhering to the letter to the spirit of the law. So they should be paying a proper percentage of their profits. At the moment, corporation tax is at 28%, so they should be paying at that on their profits in the UK.
So they should be paying 28 or more percent. I mean, does anyone, for example, I'm just thinking of UK Uncut got perhaps an ISA. I mean, that's tax avoidance, isn't it? Or perfectly legal tax avoidance.
It's a very different thing, though. We're talking about companies who are avoiding
just a scale, is it?
We're talking about companies who are avoiding hundreds of millions of pounds each year in tax.
Richard Baran, what happened to benevolent capitalism?
Well, I think what's happened is that we've moved on, and obviously shareholders...
It got jettisoned, didn't it?
Obviously we have.
Yes.
And, of course, shareholders are more aggressive, more demanding of their companies and how they should build shareholder value. Now, I think there's two things here. First, in the short term, it's absolutely right for the government to seek to change the law to block various forms of avoidance, but as we've just said, it's got to be a change in law. You can't say, oh, well, you ought to be abiding by the spirit if we can't see what the spirit is. Secondly, in the longer term, the best way to tackle this new reality is actually to cut tax rates and make the UK a more attractive destination.
You talk about the spirit of things. What kind of spirit do we infer from a company's decision to register itself at a post office box in Switzerland?
One, is it a post office box?
Well, according to these guys,
absolutely, it's a post office box in Switzerland. That is the headquarters of Boots Alliance, a post office box in Switzerland. And on the basis of that, they're avoiding hundreds of millions of pounds in tax.
OK, well, I'm not going to comment on Boots specifically, but yeah, the law and the legal opportunities are there. But the reason why I say the thing to do is to actually cut UK tax rates is that what's happened is that profits can get allocated anywhere around the world. And that's what a lot of big corporate tax avoidance is about. So get your rates down, and instead of people wanting to shunt profits from the UK to Switzerland, maybe they'll want to be shunting profits from Switzerland to the UK.
A little higher here, do you?
The tax rates are internationally uncompetitive. Get the tax rates down and you'll actually get more money to fund public services.
Do you understand that argument?
I understand it. I completely disagree with it. We should not be held to ransom by these huge multinational corporations. If they make their profits in this country, they should pay their tax in this country. £25 billion is lost to us every single year because of the richest corporations and the richest individuals in our society.
A lot of people won't share his views about what's a legitimate tactic, but they sure as hell understand the moral force of his argument. You hear it every day in the, well, maybe not the pubs you go to, any other person hears it every day about the way that big companies in this country are bilking the taxpayer and we're all having to live with the consequences.
Can I point out that this money, though, that is sought to be brought into the Exchequer doesn't grow on trees? If you take more money from the private sector into the public sector, that's not a freebie. Where does tax come from? It comes from the shareholders, who may well be your pension fund, or it comes from the employees who get lower wages, or it comes from the customers who get higher prices. Now, of course, there's an issue when some companies are avoiding, but don't please get the idea that you could clamp down on avoidance, bring in a whole load of extra money into the Exchequer. By all means, clamp down on avoidance, and then, for goodness sake, give the money back to the private sector by cutting the tax rates.
Do you worry what these guys are going to achieve?
No, because I think they're just raising the issue. It's a well-known issue. I have no problem with the issue being raised and debated fully. And let's see where government policy should go.
The reputational damage that's inflicted by actions like this, do you worry about that?
And we're not going to stop. We're going to take this further and further. We're going to force this issue on the government. The government have to stop the cuts and they have to do something about tax avoidance.
The cuts are different. I'm sorry, in the short term, those cuts are necessary. We've got a thumping great structural deficit and you've got to tackle it primarily by cuts.
There are different ways to tackle the deficit. We're saying don't punish the poorest and most vulnerable people in our society. We're saying reclaim the money from the wealthy who can afford to pay for it. Don't punish the most vulnerable people because of mistakes that weren't made by them.
Can I draw your attention to some economic research in the United States which shows over and over again that more than half of corporation tax actually comes out of the wages of the workers rather than the profits of the shareholders?
And once again, that's an example of the immorality of the way the corporations work in this world.
What do you mean? That's an example of the way a tax system works.
No, that's an example of the way that the corporations keep the profits for themselves and punish the consumers and their workers.
Sorry, taxation is punishment?
No, I'm saying the fact that they keep the huge amounts of profit in offshore accounts, and when they do pay money, it comes out of the wages of their workers.
And the shareholders are very often pension funds of ordinary workers.
I'm sure we can organise a way in a civilised modern society whereby closing the tax loopholes doesn't mean that the pensioners are the people who suffer.
No problem with closing the loopholes, but then please cut the rates so that the overall tax burden doesn't increase.
OK, chaps, thank you both very much. On tomorrow's Newsnight, our series on protests finds the English Defence League, a right-wing street protest movement dedicated to stopping the spread of Islam. And tomorrow morning's